Hey there, this is Mrs. Chabot. This video is for intermediate algebra, starting section 5.6, but it would be good for anyone looking for a refresher in factoring trinomials. So at this point in the semester, you should be very comfortable using the FOIL method, and you should be comfortable factoring out a GCF. So if that's not the case, make sure to go back and do some more practice in sections 5.4 and 5.5. Okay, so the first type of trinomial we're going to look at today, I call the nice type. It just starts with a 1x squared, then an x term, and then a constant. So what we want to do is when we're factoring is the opposite of multiplying. So we want to break it into two factors. And when you FOILed, you know you end up with that x squared if you have an x and an x in the first terms, right? X times x would give you the x squared. Now, skipping to last times last, if last times last gives you 15, you'd end up with a 15 right here. So the two numbers that go here need to multiply to 15. Right? So it could be 1 and 15, 3 and 5. And for this type, order doesn't matter, so that is essentially the whole list. Now, when I do my outer and inner terms, I want them to add up to 8x. So I want these numbers to add up to 8. So in this case, it would be 3 and 5. So it'd be x plus 3 times x plus 5. Okay, so I call this the nice type because if it's a 1x squared plus an x term plus a constant, it will factor just like this, where you have an x and an x in the first spots. These two numbers need to multiply to your constant, and when you add them up, it will give you this middle coefficient, so in this case 8. So let's try that one more time. But if you look at 6x cubed plus 24x squared minus 30x, the first thing you want to do is check for a GCF. So whenever you're factoring, always start by seeing if there is a GCF other than 1. So here the GCF is 6x. So you can start by factoring a 6x out to the front, and in the parentheses you'll be left with x squared plus 4x minus 5. So in this case, we're not done because inside the parentheses, we're left with that nice type of trinomial that I was just talking about, right? X squared plus an x term, then a constant. So I know my first spots are going to be x and my last spots need to multiply to negative 5. Well, if they multiply to negative 5, the signs need to be different. So it could be negative 1 and positive 5, or positive 1 and negative 5. And again, in this case, the order doesn't matter. So that's the whole list. Which ones add up to positive 4? Be 1 and negative 5. Nope, it would be negative 1 and positive 5. So you'd have x minus 1 times x plus 5. So that way they multiply to negative 5 and add up to positive 4. Okay, so we're all done with that one. All right, but then what's more interesting is when we get to trinomials that aren't that nice type. Okay, so now it's a 3x squared plus 13x plus 4, and I can't factor anything out. So it's not starting with an x squared anymore, it's just starting with a 3x squared. So it will still factor to two binomials, but this time the first spots aren't just going to be x and x. So think about what multiplies to 3x squared. Well, that would be 3x and 1x. Now from here, I need to use what I know about FOIL to make a good guess, and then use what I know about FOIL to check to see if it works. Okay, so we're essentially guessing and checking. So I'm going to make some guesses down here. I know my first spots are going to be 3x and x because that's the only way for me to get that 3x squared. Well, when I do last times last, I know that those numbers will multiply to 4, looking at the constant. So I'm only considering numbers that multiply to 4. So I'll make a list over here. To get 4, it could be 1 times 4, 2 times 2, and you'll see on this type, order matters. So 4 and 1 would be a different set. So let's actually start in the middle and start with 2 and 2. Okay, so first times first is going to check out. That's why I put 3x and x. Last times last is going to check out. That's why I put 2 and 2. So when you think about the FOIL method, what haven't we considered yet? It would be outer and inner. So if I look at my outer product, I get 6x. When I multiply my inner terms, I get 2x. When you combine your middle terms together, that would give us 8x. We were hoping for 13x, so this is not the factors that we're looking for. So 2 and 2 didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my guess. Again, I know I'm going to have 3x and x. That's the only way to get 3x squared. But for last times last to give me this 4, it could be, let's say, 4 and 1. So I'll try that, 4 and 1. First times first works, that's where we came up with this guess. Last times last works, that's why we're writing these numbers, right? This is a good guess. So all that's left is to check outer, is 3x, inner is 4x. So our middle terms add up to 7x, which is not what we were hoping for. So 4 and 1 didn't work. Okay, so let's go back. Again, I know my first spots need to be 3x and x to get 3x squared. To get last times last to give us 4, it needs to be one of these sets of factors. So now let's try 1 and 4. Outer is 12x, inner is 1x. When we add those together, we get 13x, which is what we had in the original trinomial. So this is the one that works. So our answer here is 3x plus 1 times x plus 4. Okay, so we use what we know about the FOIL method to make some guesses and then to check. Okay, so notice that for this one, it took us a while to get through all of those guesses, and we landed on our last possible guess. But the more you practice, the easier this is going to be, and the faster you're going to find the correct factors. So let's do some more practice together. I want to factor 5x squared plus 13x minus 6. Don't forget to check for a GCF, but the GCF is 1, so we move on. I'm going to leave a space for my answer and do some guesses down here. Well, first times first gives me 5x squared. Since 5 is prime, again, the only way to get that would be 5x and 1x. I feel really good about the 5x and 1x. But last times last is negative 6. Okay, so there's a number of things that could be here. Let's look at some factors of negative 6. Okay, so the signs need to be different. So it could be 1 and negative 6, 2 and negative 3, 3 and negative 2, 6 and negative 1. But that's not actually the whole list because the first factor could be negative and the second factor could be positive. So keep that in mind. So again, I like to start in the middle of the list. Numbers that are closer together tend to work more often, but that's not a guarantee. But how about we start with 2 and negative 3? Okay, so we'll start with plus 2 minus 3, right? Again, the signs need to be different to get that constant of negative 6. First times first checks out and last times last checks out because that's where we came up with these numbers. When we multiply our outer terms together, we get negative 15x. We multiply our inner terms together, we get 2x. We add them up, we get negative 13x. Notice that is just the opposite of what we're hoping for. So whenever you make a guess and you get the opposite middle term, you're almost there. Keep all the digits exactly where they are and change the signs, right? So if I make this a minus and this a plus, They still have different signs, right? They'll still multiply to -6, that's no problem. But then our outer would be positive 15x. Our inner would be negative 2x. So we add those up, we get the positive 13x that we wanted. Okay, so whenever you get the opposite sign from what you were hoping for, keep all the digits where they are and change the signs. So that will give us 5x minus 2 times x plus 3 for our answer. Okay, let's do one more example. I want to factor 24x squared y squared minus 42xy squared plus 9y squared. So again, whenever you're factoring, don't forget to start by looking for a GCF. So on this one, the GCF is 3y squared. So we'll factor that out to the front, and that will leave us with 8x squared minus 14x plus 3. But we're not done, because notice 8x squared minus 14x plus 3 is a trinomial that looks like it is probably factorable. So keep the 3y squared out front, and I expect this trinomial to factor to 2 binomials. So I'll leave a spot for my answer. And let's focus on this 8x squared minus 14x plus 3. Okay, don't worry about that GCF out front. We already brought it down. That's all set. Okay. So this time, I'm not sure what's going to go in the first spots. What multiplies to 8x squared? Well, it could be 8x and 1x, or it could be 4x and 2x. And other than switching the order, those are the possibilities. So I'm going to start with the numbers that are closer together. I'll try 4x and 2x, but if that doesn't work out, I would need to also consider 8x and 1x. Okay, so that gives us our first times first. Last times last needs to multiply to 3, so I need factors of 3, such as 1 and 3 or 3 and 1. All right, so why don't I try 1 and 3, right? We got our first times first is good, last times last is good. When I multiply my outer terms, I get 12x. I multiply my inner terms, I get 2x. Those add up to 14x, but I was hoping for negative 14x. So remember what I should do, it's just the opposite of what I was hoping for. So let me change those both to negative. Okay, so will those still multiply to positive 3? Yes, right? The signs are still the same, but now my inner and outer terms will add up to negative 14x like I was hoping for. Now, if you plan ahead of time and you saw that your factors need to multiply to positive 3, they need to be the same, but your middle terms are going to need to add up to a negative number, well, then you may have already known those would both be negative. If not, you can still figure it out like we just did, right? We need to get that negative 14x in the middle. Okay, so finally we get 4x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. That's all done. Leaving the space for my answer helps me make sure that I keep that GCF there, right? That 3y squared needs to be part of that polynomial, so don't lose that GCF out front. From here, you'll see 2 more examples in the My Math Lab videos, and then you need to do lots and lots of practice. Like I said, this does get better with practice. Okay, you need to be able to factor polynomials in order to succeed in this class. All right, well, I hope you found this helpful and have a good day.